In today's program, we would discuss about the U.S. court judgment which allows spouses of H-1B visa holders in the tech sector to work in America. Dr. Pant, how important is an H-1B visa to work in the U.S. tech sector to begin with?
Well, it is a very important category. The American tech sector in the last few decades has expanded phenomenally in the U.S. And one of the reasons of their expansion and of their central role in American economy has been their ability of tech companies to tap in the best talent across the world, and in particular from India and China. Now, what tends to happen is that an H-1B visa, which is a non-immigrant visa, it allows companies in the U.S., tech companies, to employ foreign workers in occupations, in particular, in specialized categories. So there, the tech companies do not find or do not have in-house expertise, in-country expertise. They hire thousands of employees every year from India and China, which is sort of space that increasingly, has become the defining feature of the American tech sector. Their ability to tap on the best talent in the world has allowed them to expand, has allowed them to be innovative. And so H-1B visa actually sits at the heart of American tech space in more ways than one. And therefore it is so important, and therefore it has become so important for the tech companies, and also become very, very politically contentious at a time when employment opportunities broadly are dwindling in the U.S. And therefore it has created a number of these conversations around what needs to be done, how it needs to be reformed, and what curtailments are needed to ensure that American workers get some preferences. And I think the debate on H-1B visa, what has happened in this decision, also reflects some of those concerns and issues.
So do tell us about this U.S. court decision on the part of the district judge regarding allowing spouses to work as well. How does this affect and impact the Indian diaspora in the U.S.?
See, it impacts it very significantly, because a lot of the people who get employed go to the U.S. Hoping and thinking that they would be able to live where both of them, their spouses, would be able to work. Now, and this was something that had been going on for some time, almost, I think, 100,000 work authorizations have been issued by U.S. to spouses of H-1B workers over the last few years. So it's a significant number. But because of this new regulation, that employment authorization would not be issued to spouses of certain categories, had created a lot of concern in diaspora that how people be able to sustain themselves in an economy where the costs of living had been rising. So you end up in a very difficult situation where either the worker feels that he or she has to live alone in the U.S. without the family, or whether they need to relocate back to India and give up the job in the U.S. because it becomes financially unsustainable. So I think the decision by dismissing the lawsuit filed by Safe Jobs USA perhaps gives great relief to a number of Indian diaspora, which have been worked up, which have been concerned about the implications of their spouses not getting employment authorization. So I think it will certainly ease that concern. It will certainly ease hopefully the economic burden on these families, and hopefully allow the H-1B visa holders to live a more peaceful and contented life within the confines of their own families, without the sword hanging that any time they'll be asked to relocate or they will face financial troubles.
So after this regulation in the permit was relaxed, Safe Jobs USA filed this lawsuit, which was dismissed at the U.S. district judge level. Do tell us about Safe Jobs USA. What is the nature of this party?
See, in the last few years, what has happened in the U.S. is that there's a number of organizations have come in arguing that, look, we need employment opportunities in the U.S. should primarily go to American workers. And this particular organization, Safe Jobs USA, basically is an organization comprising primarily of IT workers. And their primary grounds is that they have lost their jobs to H-1B workers. And therefore, they have been making this case that, look, it should be more difficult for H-1B workers to come to the U.S. and work. And one of the ways in which you can make that difficult is by not allowing their spouses to work and earn in the U.S. So therefore, they filed this lawsuit. And of course, this lawsuit was opposed by tech companies like Microsoft, Google, Apple, and Amazon, because they knew that the reason why they are getting these H-1B workers is because they lacked talent and they lacked that particular expertise in the U.S. So without the H-1B workers, they won't be able to sustain their work, their companies. the Safe Jobs USA wanted to make it difficult for H-1B workers to come to and work. So I think one has to look at it within the broader political economic context of the U.S., where this desire to have employment opportunities in the U.S. primarily for Americans has gained traction. It was one of the reasons why we saw a lot of this being supported by even President Trump when he came to office. So there has been this political mobilization along those lines. But for the time being, the Safe Jobs USA their lawsuit has been dismissed by the local court. But it remains to be seen whether this will be appealed against and whether they would go forward with taking it to higher courts.
Well, yes, the right to appeal is there. But speaking of rights, what is the scope of immigration rights in the U.S., especially for tech workers who land in the U.S. with an H-1B visa?
Well, they are quite, it's very restrictive actually, because H-1B visas are, as we have been discussing, they are primarily they cater to a particular employment deficit in the U.S., a particular specialty deficit in the U.S. So it is a non-immigrant visa, that primarily is aimed at allowing U.S. companies to employ foreign workers. Now, and technology companies, of course, given the nature of their field, depend on this visa to get the best talent from countries abroad. But as far as the rights of the H-1B visa holders are concerned, they're very restricted, because they eventually have to go back. They can't move from one job to another in the U.S. As part of this visa. So if they want to change their profession, if they want to change their job, then they have to go back to the U.S. and apply for H-1B visa again. So in that sense, H-1B visa is primarily about a particular job opening for which a particular person will be recruited to go back to the U.S., do that particular job for the time frame, and then, of course, he'll be expected to go back to his or her own country. And now, so it's a very, it's a specialized visa, and it requires specialized knowledge. Now, increasingly, what has also been happening is that there have been demands for reforming the system. So just a few days back, we have had legislation being introduced in the U.S. Senate, which calls for a comprehensive overhaul of this program, because a lot of American politicians are asking for greater transparency in the way foreign workers are being recruited. And they are demanding that this H-1B visa creates a lot of avenues for fraud. So therefore, they are saying that, look, what we want now is we want to have workers at the higher end of the spectrum, where you are linking their skills with, where you are linking their specialty occupation with a bachelor's degree or higher. So again, you can see that what they want to do is that they don't want lower-end skilled workers to come to the U.S. I think the political dynamic is in the favor of that those jobs should go to Americans. There is a sense that many in the U.S. perhaps cannot fill the high-end technology jobs, but what they can fill is the low-end technology jobs, and they don't want foreign workers to come and fill the low-end technology jobs. So I think there again we are witnessing a political back and forth, and since this is a bipartisan legislation, I think this is going to come to fruition sooner rather than later, and we are going to see more tightening of H-1B regulations because of the political considerations that are driving it at the moment, that more jobs should be available for American workers. So by making it more difficult to get opening up low-end technology jobs to foreign workers, they are going to now focus more on the high-end technology spectrum. So that is, I think, what H-1B visa does, is that while it allows tech companies to fill a certain vacuum in their structures and processes where they don't have domestic expertise, I think politically it is becoming very difficult to sustain an open-ended H-1B program as well.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Harsh V. Pant, for talking to us on this program and discussing at length how the U.S. court judgment that allows spouses of H-1B visa holders in the tech sector to work in America.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.